Now listen up. You're about to experience the birth of a Star Trek iconic symbol. The very first time the Starfleet communicator appeared on screen.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Transporter room.
Ah, yes, the chirp heard across the stars. The communicator tones from Star Trek the original series weren't just iconic. They were the product of 1960 sci-fi sound wizardry, created in an era before digital synths and libraries full of pre-made FX. Here's a behind-the-scenes scoop for the Trek World faithful. That famous chirping tone from Kirk's handheld communicator? It wasn't pulled from some space-age keyboard. It was manually crafted using audio tricks available in the Desilu Studio sound department, led by Jack Finley, Douglas Greistad, and Joseph Seroken, the unsung heroes of Trek's soundscape. While no documentation exists to say exactly how they created the chirp, it was likely created using a blend of analog oscillator tones from electronic test equipment, tape splicing and speed manipulation, and echo and reverb layering. So not too long ago, I was contacted by Kurt Turner about a prototype communicator that he had 3D printed all by himself. Now I need to tell you right up front here, Kurt is enormously talented. So even though he and I have the same 3D printer, I would have no chance at all in producing something as spectacular as what you're about to see. Let's let Kurt tell you himself about his little pocket-sized wonder.
Well, here it is. I squeezed a microcontroller in there, which let me do a bunch of cool things. Not only does it chirp immediately when opened now, but it randomly chooses from 31 unique chirp patterns, all authentic and exactly as heard throughout the show. It's not completely random, as it favors the patterns that were repeated more often. I worked out a fun Easter egg, too. If you power it up, power switch is on the back here, right there. So if you power it up while the antenna is open, you get a little surprise a few seconds later. So let's close this lid and put it down. Now the delay lets me put it down and pretend that I'm finished with the demo. But in reality, you give it just a couple seconds. Uh-oh. Now, it'll continue to beep every 7 seconds until it's answered. And once you do, you have to give it the obligatory... Kirk here.
This is the bridge, Captain. Our power systems have just come back in. Do you require assistance?
There are 11 bits of dialogue in there from Spock, Scotty, Uhura, Sulu. You don't actually have to wait for it to beep. You can just power it up with the antenna open, then close it, open it again. So, there she is. That's what I've been working on. I hope you like it.
Now, during a follow-up interview, Kurt told me about a fascinating discovery he made while doing his research. Now, before we actually get into this clip, I want to make one thing very clear for the viewing audience. What Kurt found wasn't a secret. There are many who watch this channel that will swear they already knew, and you know who you are, but the vast majority of people watching, for them, this will be the first time they've ever even heard of this. In fact, this discovery hasn't had anything printed about it since 1993. As we lose more and more Gen 1 people, this is a prime example of an interesting piece of history that'll be forgotten if not documented for newer generations. But let's let Kurt tell you about it. And when did you realize you may have actually been onto like a forgotten knowledge type of item? It's like this family coincidence.
Every communicator prop that I've ever seen just chirps the same way when you open it. And in the show, practically no two chirps are the same. I mean, there's just so many different ones. It's so varied. So I wanted to try to capture that. And I started off by trying to find as many clean sections of footage that I could that didn't have somebody talking over it and music behind it, or so that I could maybe put as many, get as much variation as I could in the electronic version. When I started getting discouraged because there are very few that don't have music behind them or some kind of noise, or I decided I was probably going to have to splice them together by hand from a couple of clean chirp sequences that I'd already found. So that involved bringing them into Audacity. And my plan was, okay, here's a chirp from the show that has noise in it. I'm going to try to line these up with the clean ones that I have and splice out individuals and put them together manually to try to make an approximation of this one that was in the show. But when I brought it into Audacity and started looking at them individually, I noticed that this 3-chirp pattern lined up perfectly with a section out of the 10-chirp. So then I started bringing in other words, and I found out that they lined up at that point. Almost all of the chirp sequences in the show were spliced out of that same 10-chirp sequence.
Now, this is the first set of communicator chimes that Kurt was working with. You can see that all 4 of the lower sequences nicely map into the topmost sequence.
If you have any videos, photos, or documents that you would like to donate to us, please feel free to send them to jim@trek-world.com or submit them via the web at submit.trek-world.com.
The following video clip that we're about to see was made by Kurt, and it does an extraordinary job of communicating what he's found.
That's border room.
Enterprise.
McCoy.
Calling Dr. McCoy.
Kirk here.
So now you have to ask yourself, surely this all can't be a coincidence, right? And with some forensic research, a unique vinyl LP was discovered from all the way back to 1983. So let's take a look at what was found. Ready? And this little fella right here is Star Trek sound effects from the original TV soundtrack. Initially released in 1983, this vinyl-only release contains 72 isolated sound effects directly sourced from the original analog tape masters of Star Trek. It would later be reissued by Crescendo Records in 1993 on CD, and then it would disappear from the market. What you are now going to hear is the whole master communicator sequence free of any additional background noise or music. And by looking at the rear jacket of the LP cover, we are finally given the names of the gentleman who created all of the various beeps, squeaks, blips, chirps, and tings that all of our favorite Star Trek sound effects were made of. Now, unfortunately, this section was removed from the CD reissue done in 1993, and in doing so, we lost the only documented record of all 3 men who were responsible. By the time the LP was released, Jack Finley had retired from production, and by the time the 1993 reissue came out, the only documented records at sites like IMDb and various books such as Inside Star Trek neglect to mention him or what he did at Desilu, which is truly a travesty. Because of these 3 men, it was his primary job to create and maintain the archived effects masters. And as such, he is the reason that we have all of these saved effects 6 decades later. And I can't even find my high school yearbook. Now, before we leave this video, I really want to bring you back around to the real star of this story, Kurt Turner's 3D printed communicator. It's hard to believe that the disassembled communicator you see here is printed entirely from plastic filament, and I just wanted to thank you so much for visiting my channel to watch one of my videos. I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed making it. If you do enjoy this video, I would personally be very grateful if you might please consider subscribing to the channel. Why, you might ask? Well, viewer subscriptions help to ensure that I am able to continue providing more Trek World content like the video you just watched.